No lighty, no likey. There is an awesome Horrible Histories sketch about Philip of Spain attempting to secure the hand in marriage of Elizabeth I. Ooh, aren't I bad? Matthew Bainton makes him seem like a player, moving on heartlessly from one sister to the next. Given descriptions of his personality, however, it seems more likely that his decision to propose marriage to Elizabeth was driven by real politique. Philip of Spain's father, Charles V, had driven into him the importance of extending the Habsburg sphere of influence. By marrying Elizabeth I, he would retain influence in England and hopefully persuade Elizabeth to continue the country's return to the true faith. The Privy Council had other ideas. They had witnessed firsthand the damage done by the association, both domestically and internationally. For her part, Elizabeth I appreciated that staying single would allow her to mingle, read flirt outrageously, string suitors along. This tactic would come back to bite her on the posterior in later years, but she knew her own mind. #slaygirl. So not a great start to the relationship between Philip of Spain and Elizabeth I. It is important to note that he was not heartbroken by her rejection. It upset his plans, but nothing more. In fact, he moved on pretty quickly, marrying Elizabeth of Valois in 1559. Elizabeth I, for her part, was very polite when she turned him down. There were no hard feelings, yet. European religious tension. Jesus would probably have wept if he saw what was being perpetrated in his name in 16th century Europe. The intensity of the conflict between Roman Catholics and Protestants was mind-blowing, no less than in France, but I will come to that later. After the 5 years of Counter-Reformation under Mary I, Elizabeth I decided a compromise religion would be perfect for England. Known as Anglicanism, it may have appeased the majority, but it angered the militant minority. Meanwhile, in Roman Catholic continental Europe, Philip of Spain had donned his cape and pulled his pants up on the outside and declared that it was his responsibility to defend Roman Catholicism against all heretics. Philip, widower of Elizabeth's half-sister, Mary I, had once hoped to marry Elizabeth I to maintain Catholic influence in England. However, Elizabeth's commitment to Anglicanism and refusal to marry Philip deepened the rift between England and the Habsburg Empire. Tensions increased with her support of Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, then under Spanish control. More of this later. In 1570, Pope Pius V issued the 1051-word, yes, I counted, papal bull, Regnans in Excelsis, raging against Elizabeth I and declaring her a heretic. It released her subjects from allegiance to her, effectively offering them a free pass to rebel against her. However, the bull had limited support within England, even among English Catholics, many of whom remained control of the Atlantic Ocean. Why are pirates called pirates? Because they are. There we are, one of my favourite jokes. You can have it for free. The Atlantic Ocean was the wet stage for conflict between England and Spain. Egged on by Elizabeth I, Spanish ships were attacked as they returned from the New World, laden with gold and silver. Isn't this piracy, I hear you ask? Isn't this punishable by death, I hear you inquire? Yes and no. Attacking ships belonging to a foreign power was considered an act of provocation, possibly a declaration of war. So Elizabeth I found a way around this by issuing letters of marque, essentially get-out-of-jail-free cards that allowed privatars, such as Francis Drake and John Hawkins, to raid at will. As you can imagine, Philip of Spain was not thrilled by this situation. He had a good thing going in the Americas, and the Spanish Main provided him with an imperialist toehold that could be consolidated over time. Elizabeth I also had imperial ambitions and was not going to let Spain establish a monopoly across the pond. She also quite liked the riches that her swarthy sea dogs brought home. Huzzah! The European balance of power. England, France and Spain had been in a soap opera-worthy triangle for decades. There were alliances, there were wars, there were new alliances, there were new wars, etc., etc. By the end of the 1550s, a passable balance of power had been established, which put Philip of Spain off attacking England. He wanted to, he really did, but Charles IX would probably come to Elizabeth I's rescue. Now, if France could somehow be taken out of the equation, cue the French Wars of Religion, a sectarian tragedy which brought out the very worst in people. You may have heard of the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. If not, Google it, it was awful. For nearly 30 years the war carried on, with Philip of Spain in the background, supporting the Catholic League, and trying to extend the parasitic tentacles of the Habsburg Empire. All the while, Elizabeth I could see that Philip of Spain was establishing an unassailable position in Europe. So, she decided to poke the bear. Poking the bear. What could Elizabeth I do to upset Philip of Spain? Plenty, as we have seen already, but she needed something which would cause him bother and distract him from attacking England. Now, the Spanish Netherlands, modern-day Belgium and the Netherlands, had been ruled by Philip of Spain since 1556. The Dutch did not want to be ruled by what they saw as an absolutist regime. So, in 1568, a revolt began. Led by Dutch Protestants, it diverted Spanish money, troops, weapons, etc. Elizabeth I did not want Spain to have control over the English Channel, which absolute authority over the Spanish Netherlands would give him. So she scheduled a meeting at the Palace of Nonsuch in 1585, between her Privy Council and Dutch leaders. She promised money, troops and weapons. She promised to send her favourite, Robert Dudley, whisper, the Earl of Leicester, to take command. She promised more than she would ever provide. The Dutch expected a lot, but Elizabeth I's intervention was not all that. Still, she had shown solidarity with a European Protestant state. She had stood up against the Roman Catholic bloc. Maybe Elizabeth I realised that her interference, would backfire. Maybe not. Philip of Spain found her actions provocative and strengthened his resolve to rid England of its illegitimate heretic of a queen. There's something about Mary. Roman Catholic rulers in the 16th century tended to have each other's backs. After all, they were defending the true faith against Protestant heretics left, right and centre. Mary, Queen of Scots, not to be confused with the millions of other Marys knocking around in Tudor England, was a Roman Catholic queen. She was also the granddaughter of Henry VII, and, arguably, had a stronger claim to the English throne than Elizabeth I. The two women were cousins, which made what happened next even more tragic. After being forced to abdicate the Scottish throne in 1567, Mary fled to England in 1568, hoping for support. However, she became Elizabeth I's prisoner for nearly 19 years. Her presence became a focal point for English Catholic plots aiming to overthrow Elizabeth and restore Roman Catholicism in England. Philip of Spain was appalled by these plots and did everything he could to stop them. No, no, he was ecstatic. There was even a suggestion that he would marry Mary after Elizabeth I was removed. Hashtag power couple. Enter Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth I's spymaster and fixer. In 1586, he got wind of the Babington plot, another plot aimed at removing Elizabeth I and replacing her with Mary, Queen of Scots. He intercepted letters and entrapped Mary into providing concrete evidence that she supported the removal of her cousin from the English throne. In 1587, Mary, Queen of Scots, lost her head. Physically. Philip of Spain lost his head. Idiomatically. Enough was enough. Elizabeth I had to go. Summary. Elizabeth I is recorded as saying, "I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman." Now this was certainly true because she was a physical wreck by the end of her reign, but she had the mind of a Machiavelli. In English schools, we are taught to view Philip of Spain as the villain who unilaterally decided to invade England in 1588. As should be clear by now, there was a lot of provocation on the part of Elizabeth I. Theirs was a fascinating relationship, predicated upon piety and patriotism. The armadas, yes, there were more than one, were flashpoints of frustration. That England emerged unscathed was nothing less than a miracle. I hope you have found this video helpful. Please like and subscribe. I aim to upload new content at least once a week. Thank you for tanking. I really do appreciate it.